Aljamain Sterling versus TJ Dillashaw takes place this weekend in the co-main event of UFC 280 Oliveira versus Makhachev, and I can't wait for this bantamweight title fight. The champion Aljamain Sterling attempts to make, I guess, technically his second world title defense against the former two-time champion of the division, TJ Dillashaw, although a lot of people will consider it the first defense of his world championship because, of course, the way he won against Petr Yan to get the belt in the first place was very controversial, and no one really considered him the champion until he beat Petr Yan in their rematch. So this is kind of like his first title defense in the bantamweight division, but that means a lot because bantamweight's one of those divisions, and this is why I'm so excited by the bantamweight division in general in terms of what's going on with the title. Bantamweight isn't a division where they've had a guy dominate on a massive win streak of title fights before. I believe, like, if you get 3 title defenses in the bantamweight division, I think you break the record, maybe, as far as I can remember. Or maybe 3 is the record. But the belt has not been defended that many times. It's not like middleweight or welterweight or light heavyweight where you've got GSP, Anderson Silva, John Jones, where you have to defend like 5-6 times before you're anywhere near the conversation of GOAT towards that division. Aljamain Sterling, like, if he defends once more after this, he's in the conversation for GOAT of bantamweight. That's how quickly things can happen. So this is a very important fight for his career, and I'm really looking forward to it. I just do believe that Aljamain Sterling is incredibly underrated, and I think he's going to beat TJ Dillashaw. I really do. TJ Dillashaw has got a really good chance against Aljamain Sterling, and that's why I'm looking forward to this fight, because both of the title fights on this card with Oliveira and Makhachev and Aljo and Dillashaw are very competitive, but I believe this one is going to be competitive within the fight. No matter what, we're going to get a competitive fight where both guys have moments, but I think Aljamain Sterling's going to get a finish. I do, and I'm going to try and explain to you why I feel like there's a lot of openings for Aljamain Sterling to get the back of TJ Dillashaw. And I think his stand-up is very underrated as well. And I think if TJ Dillashaw has to worry about takedowns coming his way, I think his stand-up is going to be a little bit worse than normal, because we never really see TJ up against a guy who's really going to give him too many problems in the grappling. I mean, Dominic Cruz took him down a couple of times, but he got right back up. But when you're fighting Dominic Cruz, the last thing you're thinking about are takedowns coming your way. So he was still able to be himself in that fight, even though he was quite emotional there. But I feel as though we're going to see a bit more of a reserved Dillashaw that can't use as many kicks, because if he does, and I'm going to mention this right now, and this is why I believe Aljamain Sterling, at one point in this fight or more, is going to find the back of TJ Dillashaw and choke him out with a rear naked choke. Watch Dillashaw miss a kick. People miss a lot of shots on Aljo because he's so rangy for the division, and they're hesitant on what they want to throw. They're often off time because of how hesitant they are with especially throwing kicks against him, because they don't want to get taken down by him and have him shoot on them. But there are many ways that Dillashaw fights that leave him very vulnerable to being taken down. Now, his ability to get back up is very good, but pay attention to when he misses kicks on opponents. He's so, like, perfect and fancy with the way he does everything. And I think this is going to cost him. I really do. He will throw a kick, and he'll do like a very flamboyant follow-through of the kick and spin right around and get back to his normal stance. Like, he's not going to throw a kick and then just sort of drop it back down and step through into things and stuff like that. Like, he'll miss a body kick, and he'll spin right round and reset himself. And that's not bad to do when you don't have to worry about a guy pouncing on your back like Aljamain Sterling. But when you're in front of Aljamain Sterling and you're starting to miss those kicks, like when he does a little fake step to an inside leg kick and misses it, if you're turning your back on Aljo and he starts to time that off of missed kicks, and he starts to realize, here comes a kick, I'll shift out the way and immediately shoot for this guy's back when he starts to turn his back on me. I know Dillashaw's going to want to stop doing that in the build-up of this fight, but habits happen. You know what I mean? And I think that's a massive opportunity for Aljo to take the back. I also believe that the way TJ Dillashaw steps forward in combination sometimes to find his opponent, which he's going to have to do in this matchup because of how rangy Aljo is, he squares up his hips a lot when he's stepping through. Quite a bit. He'll square his hips up, step through on combinations, start scooting off to the side and stuff like that, but he'll be completely square with his opponent as he's throwing off of both angles and stuff like that. And I feel like that's an opportunity for Aljo to shoot for a takedown. And although I believe TJ Dillashaw will scramble those takedowns if Aljo does shoot them. How does TJ get back up? He has an arrogance to himself, TJ Dillashaw, with his takedown defense, which is almost like there's no fear of anything happening. So he'll literally like kip up, scoot his hips out, and just start standing up immediately. Now that can work against a certain level of opponent. But when you've got a guy who's almost like Aljamain, who's almost shooting a takedown, not to end up in full guard on top. He's not shooting to end up in side control on top, or to get full mount over you, or to get half guard on you, and start sort of controlling you and landing total strikes. He's shooting so that just a scramble occurs to where he can maybe try and get the back in that moment. And I think he's going to be able to do that against TJ Dillashaw, who'll just stand back up, protect himself, maybe try and stop a hook from going in. But Aljo just needs one hook, and he's like a backpack in that way, where he will find his way onto your back. And Dillashaw turns his back a lot. He ends up spinning a lot and showing his back after he misses kicks quite a bit. And there's just so many opportunities for Aljo to find his back. And I think it's going to be a problem for Dillashaw. You know what I mean? No ligaments in his legs anymore. Trying to hold up the weight of Aljo. They're going to end up on the ground if Aljo does take his back. And I think it's just going to be a problem for Dillashaw. Do I see Aljo finishing Dillashaw on the feet? No. Could I see Dillashaw finishing Aljo on the feet? Yes. But I do see Aljo giving Dillashaw enough to worry about on the feet to where the takedowns aren't going to be so easy to predict. Because I think Aljo's stand-up is very underrated. And I want to take a second to get into Aljamain Sterling's record here. Dillashaw has a great record. You know what I mean? TJ Dillashaw has a phenomenal record. Can't deny it. He's got a solid record. What can you say? You know what I mean? 18-4. He's only lost to Cejudo at 125. So at bantamweight, he's 18-3. Split decision to Dominic Cruz. Very close fight. I thought he lost, but whatever. He lost to Rafael Assunção, which was a fight where, you know, arguably he could have won that fight. But whatever, they gave it to Rafael Assunção. I thought he could have won that fight based on the second and third round. But, you know, it was close. Close enough. And it wasn't like a robbery by any means and stuff like that. And then he got KO'd by John Dodson as well. But look at Aljo's record, man. So underrated. I'm going to look into some of the losses here. The Marlon Moraes knee. It was supposed to be a head kick. He shot in for a takedown. The knee hit him in the head and he got KO'd. And I think this is a source of why people underrate Aljo. When they've seen you get brutalized and slept out cold like that, it's hard for them to even imagine you as a savage, brutal warrior that's going to be a dominant champion. Like, Petr Yan was so dangerous because we'd never really seen a moment of weakness with him. Dodson caught him off balance and dropped him, and he got right back up and got right back to whooping John Dodson. That's all we had on Yan, on his come-up. So he was very easy to see as a guy who's going to be dominant moving forward because there's no weakness as far as we're concerned. But with Aljo, we'd seen him get KO'd, so immediately you start saying, chinny. You've got no chin. You know what I mean? But when you look at the other losses on Aljo's career, outside of that Moraes one, which was very unfortunate, you start looking at the fact that, you know, the Caraway fight, if it was scored today, was it a robbery back then? No. But if it was scored today, that's a robbery. Like, back then, 2016... wasn't really damage-based scoring. Caraway got takedowns in the right moments of that fight and controlled and landed total strikes as Aljo was getting back up and landed total strikes on top of Aljo and stuff like that. And he had double the control time of Aljo in that fight as well and reversed position in a few moments and stuffed takedowns of Aljo and got 3 takedowns on Aljamain Sterling as well. And it wasn't a very good performance by Aljamain Sterling, very young in his career, and Caraway won based on that. But if that was scored today, Aljo outstruck him round 1, 7-1 on significant strikes. 19-6 on significant strikes in round 2. 6-2 on significant strikes. He had the only submission attempts, 2 compared to none of Caraway. Caraway only won based on control and total strikes, which was scored a bit more back then. But if that fight's scored today, no doubt in my mind, Aljamain Sterling wins that fight on the scorecards. You look at the Assunção fight. Aljo was robbed against Assunção. Round 2 was a close round. I get it. Aljo won rounds 1 and 3 against Assunção. He just did. It was a close fight. But I stand my ground and say Aljo got robbed by Assunção. Assunção got gifted that decision. Aljo should have won that fight. He still didn't look himself, but he should have won that fight. So if we're really being honest here, based on today's scoring and correct scoring, Aljo's only lost to Moraes. And he's beaten everyone else. And then there's the Yan asterisk that we're not even going to get into. But we want to talk about the striking of Aljo here. Dillashaw's good at striking. Very good. But we're going to call Aljo chinny and say that maybe there's a chin issue with Aljo and he could get KO'd. Dillashaw's been hit and wobbled and hurt. And, you know, you never know how he's going to bounce back. He's just had another surgery and another long time off against after the fight with Corey Sandhagen. He just had another cut opened up on his face as well. That's only going to be more likely to open up in this fight as well. So if you want to look at stuff like what could happen within the fight to tilt against TJ Dillashaw, he's got so much scar tissue. There are so many Dillashaw fights where he's had cuts opened up. So Aljo, you know, he likes to throw those elbows. If Dillashaw comes in, tries bolting in, you see Aljo throw like a lead elbow as he comes in, or try and throw an elbow as Dillashaw holds a high guard. Those are all likely to catch Dillashaw and open up some kind of cut on his brow ridge and stuff like that. So I could see there being a cut opened up on Dillashaw at some point early on. I can see Aljo then taking his back and Dillashaw's trying to defend, but blood's going in his eye. Like, these are the factors that we have to consider in there. I don't see Dillashaw cutting open Aljo. I don't see it. I don't see him out grappling Aljo. And I think if he ends up on top, he might be arrogant enough to try and stay on top. And if you're almost getting triangled by Corey Sandhagen and almost getting leg locked by Corey Sandhagen, you're getting triangled and you're getting leg locked by Aljamain Sterling. That's just how it is in my mind. So I'm leaning Aljo here for sure. Definitely. I think there's going to be a back and forth on the feet. Dillashaw might stuff takedowns in the first and win the first round maybe. Aljo's going to keep the pressure up, keep shooting. And I think eventually he's going to land some decent shots on the feet, start to get some respect from Dillashaw, and then eventually start to find some more success with his takedowns. Dillashaw's going to defend it, stand back up, but Aljo's going to pounce on his back as he gets back up, put in the body triangle, start landing some shots. Dillashaw gets opened up with a cut, cinches up the rear naked choke, and chokes out TJ Dillashaw in round 2. That's how I see this fight going. I'll be surprised if Dillashaw wins. I really will. But he's looking in good shape. Aljo's looking in phenomenal shape as well. Both of the guys are for this fight, so it's a good one. But I've got to side with Aljo here. I can't side with Dillashaw. Plus, you've got to worry about him throwing so many kicks. Kicks are like the main thing with Dillashaw. But I almost feel like the kicks of Dillashaw are all just a distraction for his punches to land behind it. Like old Conor McGregor. The kicks were like, yeah, he's throwing all these jumping kicks and stuff. But it's almost all like a, look at this, what I'm doing. Look at this spinning attack that I'm doing. Boom, left hand lands. You know what I'm saying? Dillashaw does a similar thing with all these setups that he does. That makes it very obvious when he's going to engage at times. And I just feel as though Aljo can time that engagement, especially with the stance switch in the middle of it that sometimes Dillashaw does, where his hips get square in the middle of that stance switch. And then we're going to see Aljo blast double leg. And as Dillashaw gets back up, I reckon he gives up that back. I really do. I think Aljo's a beast. I think Yan beats him in a trilogy. I really believe Yan beats him in a trilogy, and I think that's what it's going to have to take to beat him. I think Merab would have a good chance. I do believe Merab would have a great chance, but they've made like a stupid truce alliance not to fight each other, which I think, honest to God, should be banned from the UFC. You want to make a truce with a guy who's a bad matchup for you in your division because you're friends? I swear to God, if I was in charge of the UFC and I heard that, I'd know what the next fight to make was. That's all I'm saying. If I heard 2 title contenders that are at the top of the division, or a champion and a top contender, start saying we aren't fighting each other because we're friends, I know exactly what I'm forcing to happen next. Those 2 to fight each other. This ain't no friends business. Okay? I almost stole a line from Covington there, but there ain't no room for friends. I'm sick of that. It actually annoys me so much. But I reckon Aljo is going to beat TJ Dillashaw this weekend. And I think Dillashaw might retire unless he can get a fight with Dominic Cruz, which might be the only thing that could sort of bring him back and keep him coming. And I think the reason why Cruz hasn't really said anything about retirement himself is because he knows if Dillashaw loses to Aljo, 1, Dillashaw's going to be in the top 4, and it's going to be a good way for Cruz to jump right back into the top contenders and start being right back in that title picture and looking for title elimination bouts. And 2, Cruz beat Dillashaw before, so it's just more enticing for Dillashaw's legacy to try and recover that loss that he has and then try and get back into the picture himself. So we'll see what happens. And I guess the rest of the division depends on what happens with O'Malley and Yan. We'll see. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip, I'll see you later. Goodbye.